Welcome to our deep dive into The Exorcist.
Oh, The Exorcist.
Yeah, most people think of it as just like a horror movie, but we're going way beyond that.
Yeah.
Those jump scares and special effects
Mhm.
to really look at, the deeper issues like demonic possession and how it all connects to faith and psychology and all that stuff that we can't really explain. And to help us, we have a few sources, the original novel, of course.
Okay.
And then a couple of videos, one that's a little bit critical of the movie and another that goes deep on this demon Pazuzu.
Interesting. Huh.
So get ready because we're going to try to sort out fact from fiction
Okay.
and really figure out what makes this story so creepy.
It's funny. What
Yeah.
always kind of gets me about The Exorcist
Yeah.
is how it just gets under your skin.
Yeah.
Like really plays on those fears we all have about
Yeah.
what's hiding in the dark.
Right. It's like William Peter Blatty,
Yeah.
he just reached into like the darkest parts of our minds
Uh-huh.
and pulled out something truly disturbing. And he does it right from the beginning with that prologue in Iraq.
Oh yeah, that opening scene
Yeah.
with the priest finding that Pazuzu amulet.
Yeah.
I mean, that just sets the mood right away.
Yeah. It's like this instant feeling that something bad is coming.
Exactly.
And the book really slowly builds that sense of dread.
Mm,
But it's a lot more in your face, with all the special effects.
right.
Some critics actually, like the people over at CinemaSins, they think it kind of set a new bar for demon possession in movies.
Interesting.
And that it might have even made it harder for other movies to tackle the same subject.
Yeah, I can see that.
It makes you wonder if all that visual stuff
Yeah.
actually took away from the psychological horror that Blatty was going for in the book.
Right, because the book is so much more subtle.
Exactly.
It's like all these careful descriptions of what's happening to Regan.
Yeah, the shaking bed, her sudden strength,
Yeah.
the changes in her personality and the way she talks.
Right, and all the language. It's almost like a medical textbook.
Right, it's that level of detail that just makes it even creepier.
Yeah, it's that realism that makes you wonder,
Yeah,
could this really happen?
I know. What do you think is scarier?
Hmm.
All those realistic details or the movie's like over-the-top dramatic style?
They both get to me in different ways.
Yeah.
One is like a punch in the gut,
Yeah.
and the other is like, it just gets under your skin and stays there.
It really makes you question what's real and what's not.
Exactly.
So we've talked about how demonic possession is shown, but let's look at the medical mystery around Regan's condition.
Okay.
The book walks us through all the medical tests,
Mm-hmm.
starting with the doctors thinking it might be temporal lobe epilepsy.
Right.
They see her personality changing, her anger, even bedwetting, which could all be symptoms.
Now, what exactly is temporal lobe epilepsy?
Well, it's a brain thing, a neurological condition,
Okay.
where seizures start in this part of the brain called the temporal lobe,
Hmm.
and this can cause all sorts of changes in behavior, emotions, and even how you sense things.
Interesting.
And in the book, the doctors really struggle to figure out what's wrong with Regan.
Okay.
It's not like they instantly jump to possession.
Mhm.
They think of everything from like rare blood diseases to psychological issues.
Yeah, it's important to remember that
Yeah,
the book portrays the doctors as like genuinely puzzled.
right.
They're not brushing off her symptoms or just saying she's crazy.
No, they're not. And there's this one scene where Dr. Klein sees Regan using really bad language during an exam.
Oh, wow.
And Chris, her mom, had no idea this was happening.
Yeah.
It just shows how much Regan is changing.
That's a big red flag.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how doctors today would handle a case like this.
Right.
With all the advances in neuroscience and all the new ways to diagnose things, would they come to a different conclusion?
Right, because we understand the brain so much better now
Yeah,
than when the book was written.
exactly. We have new treatments and new ways of looking at things.
Hmm.
It makes you think that what was once seen as supernatural
Yeah.
might now have a scientific explanation.
Absolutely. It shows how science is always pushing the boundaries of what we know.
Yeah,
But the book also brings in another layer, this idea of doubt
right.
that goes beyond just medicine.
Right. We're introduced to Lieutenant Kinderman,
Oh, yeah.
the detective investigating Burke Denning's death.
Hmm.
He's the one who starts connecting the dots between Denning's death
Yeah.
and the vandalism at the church and the possibility of some kind of ritual.
Kinderman's an interesting character
Yeah.
because he brings a whole new perspective to the case.
Right. He's not limited by science or religious beliefs.
Yeah.
He's just looking for patterns,
Hmm.
for connections that might point to something darker.
I like that.
Yeah, he gets suspicious of Carl, the guy who worked for Chris.
Okay.
And he even starts looking into witchcraft, asking Karis about covens in D.C.
Wow. So the book's really blurring the lines
Yeah.
between the story and real-world beliefs.
Right, and that's one of the things that makes it so scary.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you question if something like this could actually happen.
Exactly.
So do you think there's any historical basis for the rituals described in the book?
Well, there are definitely historical accounts
Yeah.
of rituals connected to different beliefs.
Right.
They're pretty dark ones, too.
And what about investigations like Kinderman's?
Oh, yeah. Well, law enforcement often looks at the possibility of cults
Right.
or extremist groups being involved, especially when things are strange or unexplained.
So we have these medical explanations,
Oh.
these hints of rituals,
Yep.
and now we're getting to the core issue, the debate about whether Regan is actually possessed.
Okay.
This is where the book really digs into the conflict between faith and reason.
It's a battle that a lot of people face.
It is, and it plays out through Chris and Karis.
How so?
Well, Chris is desperate for an exorcism. Faith is her only hope.
Yeah.
But Karis initially thinks it's a psychiatric problem. He's relying on his scientific training.
Interesting. So two very different perspectives.
Exactly. And it's interesting how much Chris relies on that book about witchcraft.
Oh, the one her friend gave her.
Yeah, you have to wonder if it somehow influenced Reagan's behavior.
Right. Like subconsciously.
Yeah, it makes you think about the power of suggestion.
Absolutely. Because what we believe can have a huge impact on how we act and even our physical state.
And then there's Karis,
Yeah.
who's constantly struggling to reconcile his faith with his scientific background.
It's like a classic internal conflict,
It is. A lot of people can relate to that.
especially when you're dealing with something that doesn't make sense.
So what do different religions officially say about demonic possession?
Well, it really varies.
Yeah.
You know, different religions and denominations have different beliefs about it. Some take it literally, while others see it more metaphorically,
Right.
or as a psychological thing.
It's complicated.
It really is. There's no simple answer.
It's fascinating how something like possession can be seen so differently depending on what you believe.
It is. And what about the psychological effects
Yeah.
of believing you're possessed?
Yeah, what kind of impact does that have on a person?
Yeah, it can be pretty intense.
Yeah.
Imagine truly believing that something else has taken over your body and mind.
Yeah.
It can lead to a lot of fear and anxiety,
Oh, yeah.
even dissociation.
So with all these conflicting ideas swirling around him,
Yeah,
how does Karis try to make sense of what's happening to Regan?
right. He doesn't just sit back.
He doesn't. He starts using suggestion, almost like he's testing her.
Okay.
He uses holy water, and her reaction seems to confirm his suspicions.
Interesting. So at this point, the book is really blurring the lines
Yeah.
between reality and the supernatural.
Yeah.
And then he notices Reagan speaking Latin and German
Yeah.
languages she shouldn't know.
And then there's that creepy scene with the tape recording.
Oh,
When they play it backwards, there's a hidden message.
really?
Marin, Karis, let us be us. It's so chilling.
Chilling is right. And even Sharon Reagan's tutor confirms that she never taught her any Latin or German.
Right. It adds another layer to the mystery.
It does.
Do you think there's any real scientific evidence for things like backward speech or other paranormal stuff connected to possession?
Well, there have been stories and claims,
Right.
but science hasn't really proven any of it.
So we're left with more questions than answers.
Yeah.
We have to rely on what we believe to understand it.
And that's what makes The Exorcist so effective.
Yeah.
It forces us to face those places
Right.
where logic and the unknown collide.
And that's what we're going to keep doing in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready.
We got a lot more to unpack,
Sounds good.
especially the exorcism itself and what happens after.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so we've looked at the medical mystery around Reagan and those doubts that Kinderman's investigation brought up.
Right.
But now things really get intense.
Yeah.
When Father Merrin, the experienced exorcist, arrives.
Yeah, he's like the big gun they bring in when nothing else works.
Exactly.
And the novel really captures that battle between Marin and Cross
Right.
and this demonic force.
Right.
It's in a fight for Reagan's soul, but also for the sanity of everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean, Merrin says something really chilling during the exorcism.
What's that?
He explains that possession isn't just about tormenting the person.
Oh, wow.
It's about making everyone watching
Yeah.
lose hope and reject their own humanity.
Hmm.
It's like a weapon
Right.
meant to break down faith and spread its influence.
Yeah, it's like a virus or something,
Right.
spreading negativity and despair.
Exactly. And that's what makes demonic possession so scary.
Yeah.
The idea that it can affect Not just the person possessed,
Mm-hmm.
but also everyone around them.
Like a ripple effect.
Yeah, exactly.
And then out of nowhere, Marin dies during the exorcism.
Oh, wow.
It's such a shock.
Yeah.
You have this experienced exorcist,
Yeah.
this symbol of spiritual strength,
Right.
and then suddenly he's gone.
And Karis is left all alone.
Yeah, to face this powerful demon.
It's a huge turning point in the story.
It is, and it raises so many questions.
Like what?
Well, does it mean that traditional methods don't work against this kind of evil?
Hmm.
Or does it show that even the most devout people are vulnerable
Right.
when they confront something so dark?
The book doesn't shy away from showing the risks
No, it doesn't.
of fighting evil.
On Marin's death really emphasizes how high the stakes are
Yeah, for sure.
in this spiritual battle.
So what does Karis do?
Well, driven by compassion and maybe a desire to prove himself,
Okay.
he challenges the demon directly,
Really?
provoking it to leave Reagan and enter him.
Wow, so he sacrifices himself.
He does to save Reagan.
That's a powerful moment.
It speaks to his empathy and his commitment to helping others,
Yeah.
even if it costs him his life.
It makes you think about how different religions view sacrifice and redemption.
It does. It's a complex question with
Yeah.
no easy answers.
Right, because in some religions, sacrifice is seen as a noble act of devotion,
Yeah.
while others focus more on inner transformation and self-improvement.
The Exorcist doesn't give us clear answers,
Right.
but it makes us think about these deep themes through Karas's actions.
Yeah.
Like, what would drive someone to such a selfless act?
Mm-hmm.
What are the limits of faith?
Right.
And how far would we go to protect those we care about?
It makes you think about good and evil
Yeah.
and how they show up in what we do.
And it makes us think about how we understand and deal with suffering and loss.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
It is, and even though the exorcism seems to work,
Yeah.
the exorcist doesn't end neatly.
Right.
It leaves us with questions
Unanswered questions.
and unresolved issues that stay with you.
Yeah, I agree. One of the biggest mysteries is Burke Denning's death,
Right, was it really an accident?
like the police thought.
Yeah, or was there something more going on?
It's hard to say.
We're left to consider the possibilities.
Yeah. Was it just a tragic coincidence, or was it planned by the demon?
The book doesn't give us definite answers,
Right.
but it encourages us to look at the evidence
Hmm.
and come to our own conclusions.
And then there's Carl.
Right, the servant.
Kinderman thought he might be involved.
He did, but his alibi checked out.
Still, it's unsettling.
Was he hiding something?
Right.
Or was he just a pawn manipulated by forces he didn't understand?
It makes you think.
It shows how the effects of evil
Yeah.
can reach far beyond the immediate victims.
Right. Even when the main threat is gone,
Yeah.
the scars and the shadows can remain.
The Exorcist doesn't just focus on the supernatural, though.
No, it doesn't.
It also explores the dark side of human nature.
Yeah. We see jealousy, deceit, manipulation,
Right.
but also incredible selflessness.
That's what makes the story so compelling.
It is.
It's a mix of supernatural and psychological elements.
It's not just a horror story.
Right.
It's a reflection on how fragile we are,
Yeah.
the choices we make, and the things that shape our lives.
And then there's that chilling final conversation between Chris and Dyer,
Oh, yeah.
where Chris admits that she still doesn't believe in God,
Right.
but she can believe in the devil
Yeah.
because he keeps advertising.
It's a haunting statement.
It is.
It acknowledges that evil and suffering are always present in the world.
Right.
It suggests that darkness is always there,
Yeah.
looking for our weaknesses
Right.
and trying to spread its influence.
It makes you think about how we face evil in our own lives.
It does. Do we ignore it and hope it goes away?
Yeah.
Or do we confront it head on, even if it's dangerous?
The Exorcist doesn't give us easy solutions,
Right.
but it forces us to confront these tough questions
Yeah.
and wrestle with the complexity of good and evil.
Right. Both within ourselves and in the world.
So even though the exorcism is over
Yeah.
and Reagan seems to be free,
Right.
there's still this uneasy feeling.
It's like the story saying evil never really disappears.
Yeah.
It just changes shape, adapts and evolves.
To find new ways to exploit us.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder about the lasting impact
Mhm.
of an experience like that.
Right.
How do you move on after facing something so traumatic?
Yeah.
How do you rebuild your life
Right.
and your sense of self
Yeah.
when everything you thought was real has been shaken?
That brings us back to the question we've been exploring.
Right.
Does The Exorcist make you believe in demonic possession?
Yeah. Or does it just show us the darkest parts of human nature,
Mm-hmm.
the potential for evil that we don't fully understand?
It's up to each person to decide
Yeah,
based on what they believe and what they've experienced.
right. The Exorcist doesn't give us easy answers.
No, it doesn't.
And that's what makes it so powerful.
And so lasting.
Exactly. It forces us to face the fact
Yeah.
that there are things in this world that we
Right.
may never fully understand.
And maybe that's the scariest part of all.
Yeah.
That feeling of the unknown.
Right.
Knowing that there are shadows out there.
Yeah.
Just beyond what we can grasp.
And those shadows stay with us.
They do.
Long after we finish the book or turn off the movie, we've covered a lot of ground, the medical stuff, the investigation, the actual exorcism, all
Right.
those unanswered questions.
Yeah.
But there's this one thing from The Exorcist that really sticks with me.
What's that?
This idea that evil preys on weakness.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, Regan is at such a vulnerable age.
Yeah.
You know, that transition between childhood and being a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying to figure out who she is,
Yeah.
where she fits in the world.
Right.
It makes her easy to influence.
Like those people accused of witchcraft way back when.
Exactly.
Often people who were already struggling or pushed to the margins of society.
It's like evil looks for those cracks in our armor
Yeah.
where doubt and fear take root.
And with Reagan, you can't help but wonder
Yeah.
about that book on witchcraft.
Right.
Did it plant some kind of seed
Yeah.
that the demon could then use?
It's hard to say for sure.
Hmm.
But it definitely raises questions
Right.
about the power of information.
Especially when we're talking about something like possession.
Absolutely. It shows how important it is to think critically
Yeah.
and to be careful about what we believe.
Especially in today's world.
Right.
Where we're constantly bombarded with information.
I mean, we're always hearing stories, seeing images being fed ideas.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell what's real and what's not.
What's helpful and what's harmful.
Exactly. And when you throw in the power of belief,
Right.
things get even more complicated.
Exorcist reminds us
Yeah,
that belief can be a good thing and a bad thing.
right. It can give you comfort and strength, but it can also make you vulnerable.
To manipulation and fear.
It's up to each of us to be skeptical,
Yeah.
to question what we're told, to look for evidence.
Before we make up our minds.
Exactly.
So after all this,
Yeah.
after going deep into this story,
Mhm.
does The Exorcist make you believe in demonic possession?
You know, it's a question everyone has to answer for themselves based on their own beliefs and experiences.
Right.
I mean, The Exorcist doesn't give us clear-cut answers.
No, it does.
And that's what makes it so powerful.
It forces us to confront the fact
Yeah.
that there are things we may never fully understand. Right?
And maybe that's the scariest thing of all.
It challenges how we think about good and evil.
It
There's
does.
a nature of reality.
Yeah.
The limits of what we can know.
And maybe by doing that,
Yeah.
it helps us appreciate just how complex human life really is.
So that wraps up our deep dive into The Exorcist.
It's been quite a journey.
It has into fear, fate.
The human mind
We've explored those medical mysteries, the battle between science and religion.
and all the psychological layers.
Love a story that still haunts us all these years later.
And while we might not have all the answers,
Right.
the questions The Exorcist asks
Yeah.
force us to think critically about the world
And about the things both seen and unseen.
that shape our lives.
And remember, this isn't the end of the conversation.
No, keep thinking about these things.
Yeah, challenge your own beliefs.
And let us know what you think.
Share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag #DeepDiveExorcist.
We want to hear from you.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning.